By the height of the Second World War, when the fighting had ground into a slow, muddy crawl, soldiers found themselves battling an opponent far more persistent than gunfire or art. Day after day, rain fell across France, Norway, the Balkans, and the mountain passes of Italy. It soaked into every corner of a soldier's life. Boots squelched with every step. Uniforms clung heavy to the skin, and weapons rusted faster than they could be cleaned. Even the canvas tarps and shelter halves, issued by the quartermaster, tough as they were, eventually surrendered to the relentless moisture. Supply chains strained under the weight of delivering ammunition, food, fuel, never mind waterproofing compounds, which were expensive, difficult to produce, and nearly impossible to distribute in the quantities needed at the front. But soldiers are problem solvers. When factories couldn't supply a solution, field engineers, mechanics, and even ordinary infantrymen began crafting one of their own in dugouts, barns, machine shops, and makeshift campsites. A recipe began to circulate quietly at first, then rapidly, spreading through units like a whispered secret. A simple, durable waterproofing blend made from 3 ingredients any army could obtain: beeswax, linseed oil, and rendered animal fat. It was cheap, it was renewable, and it could be made over a campfire. And once applied, it could turn thin canvas into a weatherproof shield strong enough to survive entire rainy seasons. Each ingredient carried its weight. Beeswax provided rigidity and a protective shell that clung tightly to the fabric. Linseed oil, found almost everywhere in military maintenance kits, acted as a penetrating sealant, soaking deep into the fibers where it hardened into a natural resin. And animal fat, usually tallow rendered from beef or mutton, gave the mixture flexibility. Without it, the coating would crack in cold weather. With it, the fabric gained toughness and elasticity. Mixed together, they formed a powerful union, a waterproofing barrier that bonded naturally to the cloth while still letting it breathe. Field journals from the era describe how the soldiers prepared it. Equal parts beeswax and tallow melted into a thick, golden liquid blended with a smaller measure of boiled linseed oil. The mixture was heated slowly, stirred patiently, and applied while warm. Some used brushes, others simply rubbed it on with gloves or gloved hands. To help the wax fully penetrate the fibers, soldiers warmed the fabric using whatever heat was available: stones taken from a fire, the metal shields of kerosene lamps, even the warm barrels of their rifles after target practice. As the treated cloth cooled, the transformation was immediate. Rain slid off as if the surface had turned to glass. Packs stayed dry, ponchos stayed reliable, and tents finally held back the weather. Entire platoons sometimes set up improvised production lines. One group melted the mixture in pots or mess tins, another brushed it onto gear, and a third hung the freshened equipment near the fire to cure. It was dirty work, slow work, but it was effective. So effective that some of the treated tarps were still being used after the war, handed down to farmers, fishermen, and tradesmen who valued them for their durability. Modern materials eventually replaced this field-made blend. Nylon, PVC coatings, chemical sprays. They were cheaper to mass produce and required no skill to apply. Factories embraced efficiency over tradition. And yet, decades later, the old methods started resurfacing among homesteaders, bushcrafters, and outdoor enthusiasts. Why? Because synthetic sprays wash off in the rain. Plastic tarps tear in high winds. Ultralight coatings degrade in sunlight, but the wartime blend can be renewed endlessly with nothing more than heat and a handful of natural ingredients, and the chemistry behind it is remarkable. Linseed oil, when exposed to air, polymerizes, hardening into a natural armor. When beeswax and tallow are added, the result is a protective layer woven deep into the fabric. It resists not only water, but mildew, abrasion, and even salt. Scratches don't ruin it. Sunlight doesn't weaken it. In fact, sunlight strengthens the bond over time. What soldiers discovered out of necessity still stands today as one of the most resilient waterproofing methods ever developed. Fully biodegradable, fully repairable, and almost endlessly reusable. That's why people today still revive it. Gardeners use waxed burlap to protect soil beds and compost heaps. Campers treat their tarps to withstand long storms. Craftsmen waterproof tool rolls and aprons. Some even rediscover the rich, aging patina that appears with used the same finish found on classic British wax jackets, which themselves rose to fame from techniques rooted in wartime ingenuity. To recreate this method now is to tap directly into a lineage of survival and craftsmanship. Render the fat, melt the wax, stir in the oil, and apply it warm. Adjust the recipe to your needs: more wax for stiffness, more oil for flexibility. Test it, refine it. Over time, you'll develop a treatment better suited to your gear than any store-bought spray could ever be. This wasn't just chemistry, it was resourcefulness under pressure. Soldiers D&T have access to labs or industry. They had only what they carried and what they knew. And with that, they created a waterproofing system that outlasted the war itself. A system still capable of outperforming many modern solutions. When you melt that blend and watch it soak into the fabric, you're not just waterproofing gear, you're preserving a piece of forgotten wartime ingenuity, one of the quiet inventions that helped soldiers endure impossible conditions, one brushstroke at a time. For deeper dives into lost fieldcraft, survival science, and practical techniques from history, subscribe to Backyard Wisdom and share this with anyone who believes the best solutions aren't always the new. Sometimes, the old ways don't just work, they work better than anything we've been made since.